Thank you. Are we ready?
Okay. The live stream has to
Just let me know.
get ready to go.
Can you see everything?
We
On
should
the
be
other
good to
side,
go.
Okay, we are live now.
All right, thank you. We will convene the Open Space Committee meeting of July 28th at 6:30, and we can start with the roll call.
I do not know who holds which position on this committee, so I will just.
There's only one, there's chairperson, president, whatever.
Okay, so if you don't mind
Well-
just calling your names and we will
Oh.
write you in.
Sure, I'm Bernadette Conway, the de facto chair.
There we
I
go.
feel like I better put that in there.
Gail Madraco, a member. Gia Pasquarelli, member.
Thank you.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda? And are there any questions or anything that anybody would like to change? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve of this agenda.
Second.
You'll make a motion?
Yeah.
And can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have public comments next, and I know we have a member of the public here tonight. This is Dave Womet, someone that I know who's interested, and he wanted to, I asked him, said it would be a good idea if you're interested to come. We're going to be going through a lot tonight. Is there anything you wanted to make a comment on, or you're just here to observe? All right, well, thank you. All right, did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting of 2 weeks ago? And does anybody have any questions or edits? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
And a second.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, so that is approved. And next we are under new business, where we have the prioritization of open space properties for potential land acquisition. So we had started this work years ago, and you've updated it. And I believe everything that you update is going to be up. So we should be paying attention to what's up here more so than what we have in front of us.
I believe so. So just to kind of step back to last meeting, I think what prompted the revitalization of this conversation was that there is currently notice of funding opportunity issued by DEEP that is out there for some grants that are available for open space land acquisition. And that started this conversation about perhaps which properties in the town of Newington could be the properties that we seek grants for. Normally, we would look at lists like this, the prioritized parcels that are identified by the Open Space Committee, to help us decide where we apply for grants. We had one of the committee members who had sent an email out to the town council, myself, and the town manager, who had indicated that in particular, one area of the town, being Cedar Mountain, was an area of the town that we should perhaps consider for open space land acquisition. And then we started having a conversation about that. There were a number of questions. The committee, you had asked me to invite the town manager because there were some questions that were for him. And then as we were having this discussion, we also in your packet included the list that you worked on on the open space parcels that you have identified that were the parcels desirable for the acquisition. And we have since updated that list to exclude parcels that are no longer available. And we have also updated it for appraisal value, which is those parcels are available on the screen before you. So the town manager is in the room, our grant writer is in the room, and the updated list is on your screen.
Just as a point of interest, I also updated the acreages because some of the old acreages were just very rough. So I did update them off of ArcGIS, and I recalculated the wetland areas and the percentages.
And you put them in the priority order?
Nope, that number that you see corresponds to the map that was also included in your, and that old map is very, very difficult to read. I have a copy of it that I can bring up.
Be able to enlarge it and zoom in.
So
That's the intention.
That is the map that we also sent to you.
Again, this is,
So for example, where would number one be?
okay, so that's also a challenge because we have to look at whether it's.
See those numbers next to the map? Those are
the numbers?
Those are
the
numbers, and some of them
yes.
have,
Oh, okay.
some of them have leaders that go into parcels that you'll see, but then the numbers you'll see are off. Everything seems to be shifted up from what I can tell.
right.
So I did my best.
Oh, yeah.
So we can attempt, like,
So
here's number one,
number one.
which is Cedar Hill Cemetery. And you can kind of see how far off we're looking on the map versus, so the numbers on the column on the left on the spreadsheet correspond to these numbers, but you'll have two number ones. The green are supposed to be residentially zoned parcels and the pink are other
We had
zones.
two lists.
It's one list. It's all combined into one.
Okay, but we had two lists.
There
So
were
that's
two-
why.
Well, we've got, it was all stapled together, but we have the vacant non-residential are the first two pages.
That's the way, again, that's the way it was labeled.
Right.
So I think they just didn't copyright. This is the combined list.
Okay,
Because there were separate lists that I found, but this was a combined list. So that's what I went with.
okay. All right, so the number on the left does not mean that's where it is in
Priority
prior.
number.
No,
Correct.
that is
That's how we
reference to
find
the
them.
map. Yes.
Okay,
Even on our lists?
Yes, even on your
That
list.
all that number is it corresponds to the map.
Oh, interesting.
and I didn't, since you had number one up there, Cedar Hill Cemetery, I didn't realize any of that was still in Newington.
Yeah,
It
that
is,
whole
okay.
piece is in Newington.
And that's under number one.
That's number one.
So
Green.
show the map and kind of zoom out a little bit, maybe.
Yep.
All right,
So this is on the map, when you look, that corner,
Yeah, this is up Hartford Avenue. You go by Balf and then everything on the right that Cedar Hill does. It's owned by the Cedar Hill Cemetery Association. I don't believe there are any burials there. There could be old ones that are unmarked.
right. And it's listed as residential.
Zoned residential.
Yeah.
well, it's zoned residential.
Zoned
right.
residential.
Okay. Thought that was interesting. Okay. Yes, go ahead. Jen.
Bernadette and I were trying to remember in terms of, that's why I got confused about the numbers here, because it seems like the numbers matched what we were talking of in terms of prioritization, because the previous commission, from what I can recall, and Bernadette says she sort of remembers, our number one priority was Cedar Mountain, which is, and a lot of these,
They're
are,
up towards the top, yes.
Right.
I could never find a list that said, hey, these are our top five. I kind of
Yeah.
made the assumption, like yourself, that.
So on Cedar Mountain, there is number of properties that are interesting to look at. And,
Two
you
and
know,
three.
you had some questions, for example, with the Cedar Crest, like one of the questions that you asked last time was, since the buildings that are owned by state are contaminated. And there are remedial actions that need to be taken or perhaps have been taken. We didn't know that. Would the state be open, or was there any conversation with the state? Would the state be open to selling the green area around the buildings, but still holding on to the buildings? And then, has there been conversation with them? Has there been conversation with Tilcon? When you look at this map, there is one parcel in particular, and it's this parcel pointed by number 33.
But it's actually
That
number
is-
3 in green on your list.
Right, that is interesting because it's a large parcel. It's adjacent to parcel that we already own. And it's on, that one is owned by Tilcon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that one is owned by Tilcon. It's on the ridge line. That's the one that has like 3 vernal pools on it. Like perhaps that could be the parcel. That's the one that we could pick out to consider.
Do we know if that parcel, I mean, I can't imagine Balf would ever be really blasting there anyways.
So
correct?
here's Keith. I don't know.
I mean, it seems so close to,
Also,
Residential.
we know that the toll made application here for a number of years ago for the residential. It went to court. There was some kind of settlement agreement I've heard. I understand that it may have been sealed. That's what I've been told. So I really don't know. So so that's something that, we should either refer to the town attorney, or maybe Keith has some other information.
Well, yeah, Mr. Chapman, I would ask you if you are aware of any information being sealed about that property when the town purchased that, and I think it was about, I'm trying to remember how long it was, about 10 years ago, at least 10 years ago. I don't remember what year it was in, but my recollection was just that the parcel that we have, it would remain open space in perpetuity. But I don't remember there being any agreement regarding parcel number 33 there. Are you aware of anything like that?
No, my research indicates that it's solely owned by Tilcon now, and there's no agreements with the town that I found anywhere that would preserve it as open space. That's something that we'd have to approach Tilcon on to see if they're interested in, we'll say, transferring that land to the town to remain open space. And I would agree that the likelihood of them having a use for the quarry operation is minimal. However, it is, possible that development could go on to, we'll say, a third of that property. So if it's decided by the Open Space Committee that it's a parcel that you want us to pursue with Tilcon, we can do that. And now one question I would have, and Gail, you may be able to answer, is this is an advisory committee to the council, correct?
yes.
Correct.
Okay, so if you decide as a committee that you want to pursue this piece of land or any other, then that would be a recommendation back to the council for their consideration before we would approach any property owners to make sure that the council agrees this is something that is in the best interest of the town from their perspective.
Well, would that though have to be, that would have to be executive session material, right? Because that's real estate and
Yeah, it depends. I would say most of the initial discussions with any parcels in town, if it's going to be transferring property from others to the town, then yes, you would want to do an executive session and discuss, what are the terms that you're seeking, and what is the use that the town is looking for it for. And then had the council decide if that makes sense, and then allow the administration to pursue whatever acquisition terms they seek appropriate.
well, in terms of that lawsuit that you were talking about though, I don't think Balf was a party to it. Wasn't it just the town and Toll
I
Brothers?
believe so, yes.
Yeah, so okay.
That was a zoning issue, correct?
No,
Oh, wetlands.
Well,
well,
Do it's specific animals, species that were,
That was a part of it. That was all part of it from my recollection. It was quite a while ago.
but it was against the Toll Brothers challenge, inland wetlands denied the application for building based on, we had the deep person come in and do the study and whatever, and the vernal pools and, the town, desire to not have the building up there. And then Toll Brothers took it or challenged it, and then they lost in court. So they were challenging the inland wetlands decision.
right?
yes.
No, looking at the whole parcel of Cedar Mountain, or the whole of the separate parcels, the part that the town of Newington owns is the pink. Is
This
it
is
the
Marquette piece.
That's the Marquette, will forever be known as Marquette.
Well, that's,
And not the little part to the right of that. Yeah,
no, this is not that. This
And
is
that's actually developable land.
correct.
That's
Oh,
that's the
the
property on
part-
the corner,
Yes.
right?
There's an
With
approved site
approved
plan.
site
for that.
that's
plan.
right.
Yeah,
That has been stalled forever, it seems like.
Yeah.
Okay.
but it's still valid.
Right, so site plan's still valid. It's an approved site plan.
Could you give us an update on that? Do you know of it, anything? I mean, just out of
There is a
curiosity.
valid site plan and there is potential of something coming fairly quick on that. I don't have really authority to say anything until
Okay.
the application is on my desk, but yes.
So we should keep our eyes open for that. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question, maybe Keith or Renata or whatever. I think what we were talking about last time is because there are different fragments, although, right now it seems like we're identifying a very desirable fragment, whatever, but until we can decide if it's even feasible, I'd hate to have to go to the town council or go here or go there, because executive sessions don't stay confidential, unfortunately. I found that out. Is there any kind of outreach that can be done just to see even if it's a possibility that these landowners,
On the Tilcon piece or on all of it?
well, all of it, right? But particularly, I guess, the Tilcon piece, but all the property owners, because it seems to me and to like the commission and the townspeople, because it's in our POCD, Cedar Mountain is a priority. So there's no way we're ever going to get it all at once. So it's going to have to be fragment by fragment by fragment. If we could identify what's even a possibility, then determine, if how to go after it. But if it's just a pipe dream, and if we put all of our, if we take the time to go to the town council and this and executive session and blah, 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 and being delayed in getting a grant going, if it's not even a possibility, it seems like we're wasting time if they just say, heck no, we don't want to do it.
Well, if I may, I will tell you that the Cedar Crest Hospital property owned by the state, we have been in discussions with the state real estate representatives for close to 3 years now. It's my understanding that most of the, we'll say, cleaning of all of the buildings for environmental purposes is just about complete now, including the big main building as well as the 6 houses at the north end of the property. We have been in general conversations with them and indicated to them for the last 3 years that when they are ready to sit down and talk about what they're going to do with that property, we want to be in the front of the line. And it's a question of, whether they have a use themselves for it, or whether they feel they can get a lot of revenue from it from people other than the town, will say, or if the town has an interest in paying a portion of it. Right now, the buildings are still existing up there. You're probably looking at well over $1 million for demolition for the main building. So the question really comes up as to if the state has cleaned the environmental issues up with the buildings. At this stage of the game, if it was determined that the town wanted to pursue these properties that the Cedar Crest Hospital sits on, and the town was willing to take the property over and take the cost of the demolition responsibility, that's a possibility. Or we can say to the state, when you get it all demoed, then come see us. But I would imagine that the state is going to want some type of money once they've spent the money on the demo and so forth. So yes, we are in contact with them, and it's it's moving very slowly. That's typical for government.
But
And
what about the ball piece, which is quite frankly adjacent to property we already own? There's no development on there. The probability of them using property that far, they're on their property that far south, of them ever doing any mining, have they ever been approached? And maybe not that whole big piece, but maybe even half of it, a couple acres of that. I mean,
we have not approached them because it's not been, we'll say it's privately owned. It's not like it's government owned, so it's no difference there. And just in some respects, if they know we're looking to buy that or acquire it, then that gives them the upper hand at this point. So the town has been, since I've been back, it's been silent as far as having any discussions with Tilcon about that property. But certainly if the council determined that they want to go for it, then certainly I would approach Tilcon and see what they'd be willing to do. And they may say, look, we'll donate it to the town. They may want to get a tax write-off or whatever. I don't know. So it's something that we'd have to query them on. But we have to first determine, is it a piece of land that we want? And then what would the town do with that piece of land? Is it intended to be kept open space for the entire acreage, or is there a portion of the acreage along Russell Road that you would want to see possibly some development on? Or, so there's questions like that we'd have to, I think, understand before we approach Ball, because if we're looking for them to donate it to the town, then I think it would not be a piece of land that they would ever want to see the town turn around and sell and make money off of for development. So there are some questions that we'd have to have answered ahead of time before we contact them to see what their interest in is, to either donate it or sell it or something in between.
well, I just think, I mean, I guess I'm looking more for a conversation about, hey, what are your long-term plans for that, for the use of that property?
But to even do that, you're saying the town council would have to approve of you even having a conversation with them.
I think the town would have to direct the administration to pursue that type of discussion, because realistically, the administration doesn't have the authority to pursue properties without some indication from the council that they have an interest in acquiring it. And so it's a matter of just getting our ducks in a row before we would pursue any private property such as the Ball piece or Tilcon or whatever it's known as. But I don't see that if this committee decides that they'd like to pursue these properties that we're talking about right now, I think you would just make recommendation back to the council, and then the council would direct the administration to proceed. And then we would keep you up to date as to what the conversation is, and hopefully get a positive response from the state at some point and the other property owners at some point.
So if we're focusing on this piece for the grant, it sounds like it would probably take too long to go through all of the steps to qualify for this grant. I may be wrong, but if we, I think for any parcel, probably it's too late for this one, but it's my understanding that they do come up every 6 months or so, or
Annually.
or annually at least. So it wouldn't be, it's still not a waste of our time to go through all of this process and get the ball
It's good.
rolling.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and really, we will do our homework in the meantime and have all of our ducks in a row for the next time it comes up, because it doesn't look like it'll happen for this one.
So the grant writer also is in the room, and she can
Okay, I didn't
comment
see her
on
up
the
there.
timing of this, but the way, did you allow her in?
She's in.
Yeah, she's in.
Oh, okay, I didn't see you there. So, and I'm speaking like, I know, but I might be wrong that the timing, maybe we could make it work, but
We have
It-
identified actually like another parcel that is interesting as well. And, it's not, perhaps it's not as valuable and it's not as interesting as this one, but it's a good parcel. Can you show it on the map, please? And it should be something that you use in your exercise as we go through this process in evaluation, when you look at this entire map and this is the two that we kind of picked, but it should be you, the committee, actually picking these and evaluating. And as we go through this process, when we end up applying for the grant, like this is the process that the grant agency will want to see you have taken anyways. So in addition to having talked to the property owners, this is another step that we kind of have to take. So this other parcel is along the Route 9.
Yeah. Okay.
And
It's
it's-
number 31 on your list.
So it's
on the
on the
last page, I
other
believe.
side, it's on the other side, right? It is also a residential
It is
property. It's pretty large. It has a big historic home on it.
Okay.
It is next to Route
it's
9.
number 31, you said. So it's the second one down.
And it's this parcel over here. You
So
can kind of see. It is not zoned residential. It is zoned industrial.
Okay.
The home that Renata's referring to, it's the old Reddick piece. Miss Reddick apparently back in the 40s or 50s was the first female Secretary of State in the state of Connecticut. It was before Route 9. They had access into New Britain and Newington.
Is it that beautiful house?
Yep,
that's up
it goes
pinned
way
up
up the hill
there?
and it's way up on the top.
There's two houses up
And then
there.
there's a caretaker's house in there that somebody lives on.
So the reason why this parcel is so interesting is it's also sort of prime for development. This is the one that's likely to get something on it unless it's preserved. So it definitely is a good contender, at least in my mind, for a property that we would like to acquire. It's adjacent to other protected land. It's adjacent to wetlands. It's adjacent to other lands. So it kind of feeds into the sort of ecosystem and habitat protected area. So
Right, this
kind of
this
makes
green
sense,
piece
right.
to the north, there's a lot of wetlands. Yeah, there's a
Right.
lot of wetlands up in here. And this is, all the way up to the north there. And
So
then-
Sonia, do you mind talking about what we did with the spreadsheet and the grant part?
Okay, so what we did is we took apart the application, we put it in a spreadsheet and we started a comparison of the properties. As you know, it's due September 30th and these are highly competitive. So we want to make sure what we have checks the boxes in terms of being competitive. So we did an initial analysis of a few properties, and we're going to keep checking them along until if we run into a problem that we can't, that it's, you know, every point counts, every little factor is taken into consideration. So the 235 Fen Road does check a lot of the boxes. Initially, I've been working with Eric on picking apart the qualities that would make it competitive, and the access to it, the least resistance that is going to is also a factor. Like, how easy is it going to be able to acquire the property? We want to be able to give the state confidence that it's something that is going to happen in a reasonable amount of time and everybody's on the same page. So that having those conversations, like you're talking in the beginning, what would it require to gain access? Those are probably longer down the road to do, but these other ones, they're so more likely with a few more conversations with the town's agreement or however they want to move forward to find out the rest of the due diligence to see if it's a viable, likely to go. I think we'd know in a week or two with if we pick a couple of properties that we're allowed to go forward and talk to landowners or to progress it. We might make a September 30th. The properties that are more complex but might be more desirable in terms of preservation, those would probably be more, I would suggest we take the year-long route and do our due diligence. So it's not impossible to do it so long as the town can grant us their blessing to move forward with this and that the property is easily acquired. Then we'd have to go through, those are the two things that we have to make sure it can happen before we kind of make sure, we're kind of doing things in parallel to see if it's a competitive property as well, because we're trying to identify those that are competitive and accessible. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I just wanted to make a comment. So in the POCD, they mentioned Cedar Mountain, absolutely, but they also mentioned wetlands. That's like the first thing that they mentioned. So I found a grant that's the North American Wetlands Conservation Act grant, which is just about wetlands, and it's a matching grant. And what the things that made my ears prick up is like the ones that were 100% wetlands that were affordable. Because I know we do have a small amount of money. It's growing, but it's still kind of on the smaller side. And it's a matching grant. So it would cut the cost of whatever wetlands we were looking at in half. So I was looking at like the one that was 25 acres, that's 100% wetlands. What else are they going to really want to do with it? It's not, as attractive as an empty piece of land that could be developed. So that was kind of my thought, is to sort of pursue like a dual lane kind of thing. If we can have Sonia work with the grant for the wetlands to see if she can get us the matching grant, because that'll make our dollars go twice as far. That was sort of my thinking.
The only thing that I'm concerned about is I think and one of the reasons I was advocating so hard for the open space acquisition fund was eventually like for Cedar Mountain or something that the town wanted. But if we blow it on one property
they
now
do want that though, because in the POCD, it's wetlands and it's Cedar. It's both.
well, I know, but what the public wants. I mean,
Well,
in my opinion, taking what little money we have now, which is like 60 or 70,000, and blowing it on a matching grant for a piece of land that really is not in the
Isn't going to
public
be-
eye.
Well, it's also not going to be developed anyway if it's
Yeah.
wetlands. So what would they be doing? It wouldn't, if it's 100% wetlands, they wouldn't be able to develop it.
Which parcel number was that you were talking about? Do you know the number? Just so I can just bring on the map.
our paperwork, you mean?
Yeah, in our paperwork.
It was 19, Marco Realty was one.
19. Oh, okay, so that's it. That's behind, okay, that's Nakatomi Holdings now. I'll show you where that is, just so we're all looking at the same thing. So that piece is
And while you're doing that, can I ask what the balance is in our land acquisition? In that line item? Do we know what it is?
I do not know that
It's
either.
not more than 1,000. We put 60,000 in from the property on road, and then there was like maybe 30 or 40,000, that's it. So there's not a lot.
So it could be 60 to 90.
Yeah, that's maybe a little more, but. And in the 60, the only reason we got that was because we sold property. It's certainly not something that the town council is going to be funding every year at 60,000. I think the level that the town council is funding every year is like 10,000 or 20,000.
So you see this parcel with the purple dot in it?
That's not-
Behind Ocklany Court, that's that 25 acres that I believe that is 100% wetlands. It borders New Britain.
Now, if something is 100% wetlands, it's highly unlikely they're going to try to develop it.
And just as, you know, point of interest, just so you know, this is the old wetland maps from the 70s. So if somebody thought it was developable and they brought in a soil scientist, they could potentially reduce it. Probably not a whole lot in that area because that is a wet area. I know.
So most developers are not going to be interested in this. Not to say that we wouldn't want it for the town.
Right.
I
And
think,
they,
I think what you're saying is to go for the ones that seem more at risk. Is that-
Yes, because, yeah.
Yeah.
and with this piece, it's also landlocked, so that makes it a tough sell for the
public
town
access.
or the public to access it.
Eric, if I may ask a question, who owns,
Yeah.
is this privately owned at this time, or this piece of land?
Yes, it is. It
Okay,
is owned, it is owned by, it must be some people on Ocklany Court, because that's, actually, I don't know the answer. I don't know where they are. The company's called Nakatomi Holdings.
so
that owns it.
if a developer wanted to develop somewhat other place in town, and needed to, we'll say, donate wetland properties to the town, and, because there's some wetlands on the property they want to develop,
Mhm.
would it not be likely that a developer may want to work a deal out with whoever owns that property right now, and then purchase that, and then say to the town, well, okay, I'll donate these acreages to you, so I can build my development on another piece of land somewhere?
I don't know that we allow that, though.
It has been done in the past. I think there's some case, not in this town, but I believe there may be some case law on the books about pay to play kind of things. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just querying myself, yeah.
There are rules about that, and I'm not sure if we have in our wetlands regs rules about that. So it's called wetlands mitigation.
Right.
And you're supposed to have like a specific in your wetlands regulations, a rule that allows for that. So I would be surprised if Newington had a rule that would allow for that, considering how Conservation Commission acts here. I mean, it's possible, but
I don't
I'd
believe
be
there's language to that
surprised.
effect. Correct.
But to go back to Gail's point, yeah, I understand what you're saying about, we hadn't even looked at that parcel, and it wasn't on one of our top lists. But if it does come up, I guess as a commission, that's gonna be something we really need to look into. Do we wanna save the whole ball of wax and wait until we can get Cedar Mountain, or do we wanna chip away at all these other pieces along the way?
When we did the prioritization, I remember we did a top 10 list. I know we did, because Peckham Farm was on it, which is gone.
Mhm.
Culver Street was on it, which is gone. And I think Church Street was Church and
Church Street
Tremont,
was on it, which is gone.
Which is
and-
gone.
And also the Connecticut Avenue.
and the
piece.
Connecticut Avenue piece, which is
And why
gone.
did that, if I may ask, but in here, why did that prioritization not make it into the POCD? Why did that priority list did not make it in the POCD? Because that would have made a difference.
Yeah.
So if,
I
so
don't know
if I
why.
can if
I
I
mean, it's
can.
just our meetings sort of ended, so we didn't finalize it and ask for it to go into the or maybe we should have been.
No, I'm
guided a
not
little more.
criticizing. This was just a question. I don't intend
If I
to.
can remember, Craig was saying also, because some of this was, if we actually put the list and identify the properties into a public document, the price would skyrocket, you know what I mean? I think that's what.
Lets the cat out of the bag,
Right.
so to speak.
Yeah, right.
So if I can kind of interject into like how perhaps you may want to go about this. One of the approaches that you could take is, and this will help with grants, is if you now start looking at this updated matrix and updated map, identify your priority, again, re-identify your priority list. For example, if you look at Cedar Mountain area, on that area, you can say, we want this whole area, but even on it, so this is perhaps our priority one, but on it, there are also this parcel in priority one is number one.
Yeah.
This other parcel is priority two. You know, there are certain sub priorities in a category of Cedar Mountain as well. So you could approach it that way. And also you can look, and you should look at the whole town and review other parcels that are easy to get and valuable, you know, as long as they serve a purpose, and prioritize and categorize those as well. That will allow us to get that ERT team. That's another thing that's going to be relevant. I can have them, they're volunteers, they work for free. They're willing to come in at the municipal request and work on properties that do not have controversial pending application. So as long as we do this ahead of time and get an okay from the property owner, you know, we can actually invite them to come in and survey the properties for environmental, and then having that environmental report will help again with the grant.
The last one was 2009, is that, am I recalling that correctly? No, it was a while back.
On Cedar Mountain?
The last one that they did, the report that you're talking about.
So they did something on Cedar Mountain. I think it was after 2009. It had
was
to
part of the
be
Toll
like
Brothers
recent.
thing.
It was,
Right,
yeah, they
it was
actually did it.
recent.
They did it twice. They did it for the original application, then a little later on, they ended up doing it again almost a year later.
But, you know, the tricky part about getting them to survey properties, and they'll only do maybe like 2 or 3 a year, so we have to be selective as to what we invite them to do, is that we will have to have a property owner allow them to do it, which will then again get us, you know, another thing that we need to do is speak with the property owners. So that's perhaps a way to start a conversation with a property owner without explicitly asking them, are you willing to sell this? You know, that is another way to perhaps tease out the piece of information from somebody that, you know, gives us an idea without having that specific question out. So that may be an approach that you could take.
But when
I
you're talking
don't
about the
know.
ones that are easy to get, how will we know which ones are easy to get and how?
So I think the ones that are, I don't know that we know which ones are easy to get, but I think the ones that are easier to get will be the ones that you know are not like super controversial. So the Tilcon piece, it has been subject to lawsuit, has like a huge company there that has like financial resources to hire a bunch of attorneys to do all kinds of things. So that one is probably not going to be as easy to get as something where you can have a simple property owner or a trust that is frankly just looking to get rid of it and move to Florida and retire. You know, so I don't know that we will ever know what's easy, what's not easy until we start conversation, but I think it's different when you deal with a large company versus when you deal with just people.
I agree that, we should do parallel paths, I guess, for the easy to get or the easier to get, but I don't want Cedar Mountain to fall off the radar and say, oh, we're never gonna get that, Tilcon's too big, blah, 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 blah. You never know until you ask or you start, approaching and giving them options. Well, what about half of this? What about, so, I mean, I hope it's not an either or thing.
Yeah, what if we identified 3 right now?
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
And
is
then,
that-
and then we present that to the town council to say, we don't know who's gonna be more willing or less willing to even talk to us or how that's gonna go, but we don't wanna squander the effort because there is a deadline on this grant, and whether or not we're gonna run out of time anyway, we might as well at least take a shot at, a few things. I mean, I don't, because we'd have to get we'd have to get them on board. We'd have to get the property owner on board. We'd have to get the grant written, right? Those are the steps, right? In theory.
Yes.
If
No,
I
and
may,
I get that, but what I'm saying is that I don't want it to be one or the other. I want progress to keep going little by little, phone calls, blah, 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 on Cedar Mountain. And granted, it's a long term, it's not gonna be for this year, it's gonna
Yeah.
be whatever, and I accept that, but maybe do a simple grab and go to see how the whole grant process for this year. I mean, I don't know, maybe that property you were talking about.
So
If I
the
may just
property
jump
that,
I would suggest that if you want to focus in on Cedar Mountain, then the state property, if the council gives the okay, we can certainly work with our state legislators and have them assist in getting a decision made on what the state's going to do with the property and have a first right refusal that for us, if it makes sense. As far as the Tilcon property goes, if the council again says, okay, let's support the open space committee on seeking, the Tilcon property, then once I get that, then I'd be more than happy to approach Tilcon and get some answers on what it is they plan on doing with that property or not doing. They may just they may say, look, tell us, it's worth $2 million and we'll donate it to you and take a tax write-off. I don't know, but we're going to need to have the council, I believe, at least give a direction that we want to go. So,
And we're seeking the grant, so.
I mean, I think if I don't know how much time we have today to do this, and just, Renata, did you guys identify any other interesting parcels when you put this together?
No, we just identified those 2 as a kind of start for you. So the first one that I thought was really interesting was Tilcon one, and the second one was the one that we showed you near Route 9. And then if you want, you can do one more.
well, I'd like to hear more about the one on Route 9. What number was it again? 31 Mangillo? Because that's 30 acres. It seems to check off a lot of boxes. Is it under, what made you identify this? Is it under, do you think it's going to be sold or
I liked it because it's connected to the other open space area. I like it because it's next to its large piece in itself. It has wetlands on it. It is.
it's not at risk at the moment, though?
Well, I don't have pending application and I
Okay.
don't have anybody asking about it, but the fact that is like that large and one house on it means it's at risk.
So would the house be a part of it? No one lives there anymore?
No one lives in the main house. There's, like I said, there's a caretaker that lives in the other house on the property, the smaller house to the north. I mean, if we acquire the property, it's, it's really gonna be up to us what you do with the homes,
Yeah.
the buildings. We did identify one other property,
Mhm.
this large piece here. on
Also
Cedar.
that, also connected.
This
Right.
works with Newington Junction and the fast track and everything else. And this is currently owned by the state. at
What
this time.
number is that?
What number
Is
is
it
that?
23?
It might be
Not
25.
Not
23.
Newington Junction. This works with the Cedar station.
Right, sorry. Yeah, this is number 23.
Oh, 23.
It used to be owned by Casera. It's now owned by the state. So,
Oh, so that's the top
Do we-
one
do we-
here.
would we worry that the state would do something to develop something, or is it sort of more safe if the state owns
I
it?
I
believe,
think it's safe.
I think
This one is probably safer.
I think they acquired it when they were doing the fast track and they did they did a little massaging of their plans with that, but they didn't do, any wholesale infringement or anything in there.
This
And when you
one,
say it's safe, it seems just less likely that anybody would develop on it. This one is owned by the state now, you said, not?
It's also in a floodplain, a part of Piper Brook floodplain, so, water is gonna collect there, so I.
Can you zoom, Google Earth or whatever the property on Route 9?
Yeah, carry on, it'll take me a minute to get there.
It's hard for, I can't picture it.
Well, we don't have a street address on here either.
yes, there is
So
a
it's
street
off of
address.
Fen
It's like
Road.
200, what is the number?
235
There's
Fen Road.
one
35
driveway
Fen.
that goes up there. You've probably never been curious
Most
enough
people
to
don't
just
drive up it.
there, but
Yeah.
but I have.
It is
And I
private
did
property.
drive up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I did anyway, just because I was curious and it's beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there is a driveway.
Yeah, basically, you'll see it and it hooks to the left off Fen Road and it goes up and around.
Right,
Up-
and it's
up to a
behind
hill.
those buildings.
And
I
it's
think
next
there's
to
like a
condos,
pizza
right.
building there. There's a little strip mall.
There is a
And-
condominiums next to it,
Mhm.
which can, that's part that also is a little.
But it's got some wetlands, it's nice wooded area, and it is a beautiful home. It's a beautiful house. It would make a nice museum or something like that. So, what is the asking price on this? And what work have you done on this
know if
already?
these are
So
even-
here's the driveway, as you can kind of see, and it goes up here. And it goes here, and then the main house is here.
Oh,
And then there's a caretaker's house. I think you can I think this is the back of Fenwood Apartments, but the caretaker house is in this area. There's another driveway from the main house down. And you can
So
kind
it's
of
near
see,
CCSU, it's like
right,
near,
here's Route 9,
you know.
Fen Road. You can see it's, large wooded piece. This area just got redeveloped by, Trust Manufacturing, is reuse that building. So that's where you're looking.
and right, I'm looking at it. So looking at it that way, it would be that and the other part
So
behind.
here, yeah, it goes something like
It does
this.
go back.
Yeah. And if we can, I'll just kind of show you on this map, it gets to a point and just comes from King Arthur apart. Once it hits King Arthur Apartments, it just goes back out to Fen Road, just runs, that's a common property line, just projects out to Route 9. And it does come behind some of these other pieces here and around.
So I mean, it's easily accessible.
And
to
it goes,
people.
so the open space part, the publicly protected land goes from it all the way to West Hartford. Like it then goes like all the way north to West
Right,
Hartford.
all this other stuff, this is all protected back in here.
How do we know it's protected from zoning in the other towns or something?
No,
No,
this is
it's
all
in-
Newington.
This is all Newington. It's called like
It's zoned as open space.
Zoned like open space or zoned public land or something like that, but it's zoned protected.
And there's also, as part of the development approval for here, you'll notice these wooded lots in here, those were never allowed to be developed. The Army Corps of Engineers stepped in because they had an Army Corps application and they denied the development of those 5 or 6 lots. So there is some, Army Corps has some purview over this property as well. And I believe,
And that's the school on the right.
Yes, that's under Reynolds.
yep. So, I know, you know, this
So
is,
that's a nice chunk of hikeable, property there.
yeah, it's wet back in here. It's a
It
little
looks like
drier
a
down
good-
here, I think.
I mean, I think I'm totally sympathetic to what Gail was, talking about earlier, but because Newington has so little green space, this is green. 30 acres of green,
Right, that's green.
And
It's,
right next to
good
the
chunk.
highway,
yeah.
purifying all of that air from the highway. I mean, I think it's just something that makes sense to consider.
I agree. I'd like to hear more about, Sonia got started on this and maybe you can finish or did you finish your presentation on this?
No, we're still working through, I didn't want to go too far because I didn't want to go down a road that, you weren't going to consider for property, but we can keep going on the due diligence piece of it. I like it for so many reasons. One, it's contiguous to a property already, and so that should help. The other thing is, it is a place where they're making it a walkable community, and it's adjacent to that, like down here, so you can see there's no sidewalks. So there's a lot of potential that will, in an overall Newington plan, it will help support that. You do things, one bite at a time. So this would be taking a step towards an overall preservation point of view. Is it now? You have to remind me. Is it in the POCD? Is this property part of that? Was it named in there?
No.
Okay, I think we could do an amendment to it. I'm not sure, but overall, I think it's probably one of the lowest barriers to preparing an application because we have to do a little bit more due diligence on that. But that would be one of my recommendations. I'm in agreement with at least the initial analysis. We'd have to do a quick work with Keith to get it to the town council to see what it would involve. But from there, I think it's much less complicated than the controversial areas. That's like a longer term one where we'd start now, kind of do 2 things in parallel, something that's a low barrier to access and also a longer term project where people have a high interest in maintaining the open space.
Does it having any structures on it? Is there anything written into the grant that would not pass or would not fly because it's got structures? Will that complicate anything?
Only in ownership and and access. It depends on what the owners, how much they're willing to give up the space, but we have to, and we're still doing it, the due diligence part of that. It might be they, maybe they want to sell the house and don't have any value. We don't know. So that we have to do more due diligence and ask more questions. But we kind of have to agree on which property you want to start looking at more in detail.
So that whole 30 acres is only one owner?
Yes.
Personally, I like this property better than the one across the street from it. Because I just think this is very desirable. The other one I think it's not that it's not desirable, I just think it's not going anywhere. Anyway.
I think, that would be my intuition too, that if you're looking at the way developers have come in and where they want to do things, they like things with a view, they like things with access. This kind of, marks those 2. Those 2 points where,
Do we have any idea what the cost would be, or did I ask that question already?
These proposals were from 2005.
Yeah.
Well, we have
They updated
updated
Yeah.
appraisals, so let's see.
And if we're looking at that one appraised at $850,000, 17 years ago. That's the only downside of this piece.
Yeah.
So the current appraisal on that was 1.1.
1.1. Yeah,
That's where the-
That's the appraisal off the assessed records, which was done a couple years ago, so it's not the assessed value, it's the appraisal. The assessed value is typically lower.
does this grant require a matching, or what does it require from the town? It's not 100% grant, would it be?
Or to remind myself.
They would expect the town to match 50% of it? Is that how that works?
I believe it is 50. Let me just make sure.
That's a big ask.
And is there a maximum on that, Sonia?
It's 35%.
Let's see. Give me 1 minute to look that up. I believe I look at these a lot, so apologies. I don't want to misstate anything. I think it is half for this one.
So I will be an optimist and say I believe it's 25, but Sonia is an
25?
expert,
Okay.
so-
No,
No,
don't quote me.
double check it,
Yeah, I'm
Sonia,
checking the
because
facts,
I'm
yeah.
like, I'm totally like over optimistic sometimes with these things.
Yeah, me too. Well, I don't, and I go the other way. Like I go, the match, there is different ways to accumulate the match too. So we might be able to grab some funding from a different way.
Maybe the state would match.
It's a state grant. They won't allow state funds for
Yeah,
match.
they're already, like, okay.
So just as a comparison, the ball piece is 2.1
Okay,
Cedar Mountain, but it's also double the size.
right.
And,
And it's
and
number
that,
one.
and that is the lion's share of Cedar Mountain.
Yeah, and I
That
think
piece.
the part that, the public utilizes is the
Right.
overlook.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's the one that,
And also the Cedar Mountain piece, Tilcon piece, attaches to large portion that
Other
we
pieces that we
already
already-
own.
Yeah.
That is part of our like hiking trail.
It's so well known. This piece is not well known.
This was more for like passive recreation and preservation purposes, like land preservation more than anything.
would we have to necessarily go after the whole 30 acres? I mean, maybe the property owner would be willing, maybe they don't want to sell the whole 30. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know what they want to do, if anything.
Right.
They may not be interested in selling anything at all. We don't know.
So this could be just an exercise for us
We
in
really
how,
need to get authorization to approach them, to get answers to basic questions, because they may not want to sell it. They may want to sell it, but they may want, $8 million for it. Who knows? But that's why, to me, I think you really need to decide which parcels you want to pursue and have the council just give the directive, and then let staff, working with Sonia and others, come back to you and the council with the answers to questions.
Maybe we could look at it in two different ways, though. It's like one, okay, if the grant is 50%, 25%, whatever it is, what can we afford and prioritize those pieces, that lane? And then in the other one, what's the grand wish list of, top 5, top 10? Because it's kind of a rolling thing depending on which source of money you're talking about. If it's another grant and there's more money, then you can look at the ones that are, in the top 5 maybe. But if it's like, what can we match? We don't have a lot of money, so we have to look at what we can afford.
Okay, it says for grant funding amounts, grants, there's a chart in the facts, and Renata and I are kind of going to split the difference here. It's grants approved by the DEEP Commission will be based on the fair market value as determined by DEEP and will not exceed the following grant funding amounts. And it goes to a municipality for open space and the amount not to exceed 65% of the fair market value. So that's I think that's where we're not a distressed municipality. So distress would mean 75% of fair market value. And if it were owned by a nonprofit land conservation or water company, it'd be 75%. So it's 65% of fair market value.
But our match, but that means our match is then 45?
That's what I'm reading here. That's what I understand.
Okay, so our match is 45.
Yeah.
10 years.
Well, not
we
quite
don't-
50, not 2025.
We don't have money.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the problem is,
We don't have matching funds.
right, we don't have the matching funds. And even for Cedar Mountain, that would have to go to a referendum. I mean, we wouldn't be able, and the town council would never.
Unless a deal was made, like Keith was talking, maybe they could donate or reduce and get a tax.
Right. So what you could do for other or sources of funding, private sources include matching funds from private individuals. So if the individual was to be so generous to donate or, donate the matching funds, the foundation, corporation, businesses, contributions by other organizations, are other government programs, and this is important to know, not the state or federal government. So it can't be something in kind from the state or a federal opportunity. So I could do a little bit more due diligence around the match requirement too, and see, you can through other conservation projects or conservation sources, see if there's some way to assist in that.
That would help, Sonia. I think even for next year, if you could look into
for
like
instance.
what can be used for matching funds in a way of, because that honestly, I think might be really what is the most stopping thing in this process. Yes.
And I don't want to keep going to the town council and saying, well, what about this piece? And, oh, what about this piece? And we hadn't thought about that piece before, but what about this one? And then I don't know. I feel like we have to definitely have a plan before we start applying for grants and talking to the town council. That's just how I feel. I don't know how everybody else feels about it.
Unless we could go, again, an executive session to and just say, listen, now that we have a grant writer and now that we have, staff on board with, preservation and open space, whatever, the resurrected open space commission, we want to start going after pieces of land. Are you just generally in favor of us pursuing opportunity? Just make it kind of general. We could even show them this list and kind of pare it down. I think get rid of the stuff I think that we know that no one's ever going to build
Well,
on.
I will
Get rid-
send you
yeah.
guys out my updated list.
Yeah, without the wetland stuff on that we know that is like somewhat protected. And that's, Keith, just go with a very general directive. Can we pursue opportunities? How much in favor? Do they have any issues with us going after, we have an open space commission, you've entrusted us with trying to, one of our goals or one of our missions is to obtain and preserve properties. We can't identify specific properties at this point because there's such issues as grants, matches fund, blah, blah, blah. But we know where the properties are in town, and can we be entrusted to perhaps, I don't know, move on, you know what I'm saying?
At least put them on notice that
Yes.
we're here.
Right.
We're going to be pursuing, be more active in pursuing. We're identifying, so at least they're aware that this is something we want to start moving on.
If I may just give you my view on things, I think that this commission that you're serving on should be focused on the parcels of property that make the most sense to, in a priority list, and not get too tangled up in the finances of it and all that type of thing. That's more for the administration working with the council. If it's determined you want to go after a piece of property, then that should be your focus. How we get it is more of the town council working with the administration, because, if you're going to decide things based upon the monies you have available, I think that would be short-sighted, because if you indicate that you want a piece of property that's that's far above what is currently in the budget. But it makes sense that that should be the piece that you want to go after, then that's what we should be going to the council with. And, you know, that's they're the fiscal responsible people for the town. So I think you're gonna short circuit yourself if you get too worried about the dollars. I would strongly suggest you identify and prioritize the parcels of property you want to go after and not worry about the finances at this point. That can come later if it's needed. That would be my suggestion.
As a town councilor, what your thought would be? I mean, this amount of money is being set up, you know, we're chipping away at it, we're putting money in every year, you know, we're being prudent, we're being responsible. And then we went to the town council, we're like, hey, there's this property we want, it's $1 million, but it's the best one, you know, and like, would you say, no, we've been saving, you know what I mean? It's like, do you look at it like personal finance as a town councilor, or do you look at it more like opportunity?
Well, it's opportunity, but it's also, you know, being realistic. You know, are we gonna spend $1 million on a piece of property but we're gonna cut the school budget? See, that's what.
Right, yeah, like I'm wondering, like, from the town councilor's perspective, like, are you gonna look at it like, no, you're gonna shoot it down because you're trying to be, you know, to do the right thing by everyone?
No, I think, you know, if we can get grants and get, you know, matching, I mean, right now, everybody, I will willing to bet, everybody on that town council is in favor of open space. I don't think there's one person and that is in favor, you know, would be against it. But you do have to weigh it against finances.
That's your charge. Yeah.
And it's responsibility to the taxpayers too.
Correct, because everything's a priority. You just have to balance it. Yeah.
But I appreciate where Keith's coming from. I think we're, you know, tasked with just kind of picking out the things that make the most sense. That's a starting place, and you've got to start somewhere.
I think the town has already identified that in terms of Cedar Mountain.
Right,
quite frankly.
right. And I think, you know, that's also part of the town consciousness, not looking at a larger, you know, mission of just having more green space, and especially something privately owned that could get bought tomorrow. I don't think it hurts to put it on the list.
Right.
At all.
Absolutely. We can't let other valuable pieces fall by the wayside because we're just focused on Cedar Mountain.
Right.
We have to keep our eye on the full prize of all townwide open space. So that being said, do we even want to go forward with this, trying with this grant, or did we already decide that it just might not be worth it? How does everybody feel about this particular piece? Do we want to go make a recommendation to the town council and have them do all the work because it'll take a lot of work to do this too, the grant. I know that's your job, but it's still a lot of work. And is this something that we want to make a recommendation?
I'm not prepared to make a decision because I want to see that updated list, what's crossed out, what's updated, what the costs are. Like, I think we need to have that before we.
What gives me a little bit of hope, quite frankly, is that we have a grant writer and we have staff. I mean, 5 properties that we wanted fell off the list and nobody advocated for it. And it was, you know, well, you know, it's more valuable with houses on it. It was more valuable for development. It's more valuable for this. No, we're not going to talk to the property owner because, you know, we're never going to be able to afford it. And that's what, on Peckham Farm, we were like really discouraged about even trying to, I mean, the individual wouldn't even approach the property owner with the fact that we wanted to buy it because they said, no, you know, it's, they'll get better, compensation from a private developer. So I think we have the staff on board, we have the commission on board, we have a grant writer. I think we can approach the council and say, we want to move forward. You know, the town needs open space. The town has said they want open space and they have to trust us. I guess I want them to say, we trust you guys to be financially, responsible, but also meet your mission. And if you identify, if a property becomes available or a grant becomes available, we trust you to put it to action and just keep us informed. I mean, I really don't see that there's going to be a lot of pushback. I don't know.
Okay.
And, if you just take like the Tilcon property,
Heartening to hear that, no.
if you just take the Tilcon property and let's just say that that's on your top 5 list. And we hesitate on moving forward with any type of action or for the acquisition because we don't have the funding in place at this time. You may miss an opportunity that will go by like these other pieces that have gone by in the last several years. And then you're going to end up not obtaining the properties that you really are seeking, and somebody else may obtain it and do something that you would object to. So I really think that, from my position or my perspective, I would not worry about the effects on other departments or other operations that may or may not be seeking more and more money. I think your role should be tell the council which places you want to pursue and have the council approve it and we start the process. Otherwise, you're going to miss out. Somebody's going to come along and offer somebody a lot of money and you're not going to be in a position to counteract that. And I just think that it's not in your best interest. If you really want to keep the open space, then do what you have to do to at least pursue it and then see what happens. And if it requires more money, then we're part of the properties that you no longer on your list are being developed and will be generating more revenue to the town as those projects get completed. So it's a trade-off. And I just think that I'd hate to see you sit here and say, these are the 5 properties we want, but we don't think we can get the money. So therefore we'll not pursue them. That would be foolish, I think, and short-sighted. So,
So you're saying that we should come up with, prioritize the whole list? Is that what you're saying? And then present it to the town council, say, we've got people on board where this is what we would love to get and we want your blessing, and we'll keep you informed of the finances, whatever on.
That's right. Yeah.
Or
And
is
I
it
think
just,
that-
would you, as the town council, approve the town manager having
Just start
conversations?
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
the
it should
next
be more in
step.
concept than what's.
Put out the
concrete.
feelers and then see what
Right.
you get back, because
Right.
you might get 3 no's off the bat,
Right.
and then but you still have other things on the list.
Exactly.
And it may be that your number 8 priority property, they may approach us tomorrow. And
Mhm.
I'd like to know from the administrative perspective, which properties you as a commission feel on a priority basis would you want us to pursue? Because you never know, somebody may, we've had land donated with half a Culver. It was Culver. That not approved. So you never know, and it would be nice for the administration to know what the priorities are that you are looking for. And if a opportunity comes along, then we can jump right on it. Otherwise, we don't know whether it's something you guys want. So,
That's logical.
Sounds good.
So that's that. Thank you for that advice because, I know that's what I needed to hear. I know you have different considerations than the rest of us because you're going to have to really weigh that, but we shouldn't have to think about that at all. We just need to make the recommendations, and so do you, but you're going to have a harder decision.
Well, I think,
So-
I think we're probably all on board on
Yeah.
the dream list of properties.
So that should be our next step, is because I don't think we should move forward with a grant. I think we're in agreement with that until we know what priority it is on our list. So unfortunately, even the work you've done on it now, I think is just not something we're going to be able to move forward to unless, am I not representing everybody here?
Can I just add to that is that I think what you do is also use the grant guidelines as a way to help prioritize, because the state, they have the same core mission that you have, is to preserve open space. So it's a good general guidelines to help you prioritize your spaces. So I would use as kind of your due diligence to understand what's considered valuable open space. And then you can also say to the town council, we're basing our priority based on not only our feelings, but actual facts, the guidelines that were developed by Connecticut Deep. So I would use, and I'm happy to help facilitate that, because I'll work with you as you walk through the process, because as I understand more about the properties and can keep an eye on different funding opportunities that might arise based on what the technicalities and the criteria of these spaces are. So going through a grant process is often program development, prioritization. It'll help you determine where you can, what would make sense later on. It's a good exercise to go through. I, for example, would not have considered the Fen Road property a good one until we started going through the due diligence, and it checks off a lot of the Connecticut Deep boxes, so we can go through and you can use that, the spreadsheet that we have, and see if it's as valuable to the state as it is to you. It'll help you rank your properties.
Sonia, would you agree that, since you've already been doing your due diligence on the Fen Road property, and it certainly sounds like this committee supports going after that piece, that at least for this round of state grant money, that we probably would seek or should be seeking the council's support on proceeding with the Fen Road this year for at least that property for the grant money?
I'd recommend that property. I might be a little bit more closer to it, because Eric can talk about it a little bit too. He's been looking at the background that's required. It pretty much gets to the heart of what Connecticut Deep is looking for. And the one outstanding question we'd have to find out is about a little bit more about the property owner, and how do you approach the property owner without tipping your hand too much? Like all that kind of due diligence behind it. Maybe who knows, the property owner might be looking for an opportunity to have make a philanthropic donation. It was someone who was very involved with the state and the town of Newington. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they're not. So, but we don't know. We don't have an answer to the question unless we ask it. So there's, moving forward and how, getting that a little bit more information. I think that might help sway a go or no go on acquiring or, going forward on a grant application. That's going to be the case on any of the properties. Is the property owner. I think that's going to be swing it one way or the other, or help you prioritize which ones you would go for a grant. And then you'd also prioritize which ones are more meaningful to the town. I think you might have two different scales there.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, you're saying we should move forward with that grant. Is that what you're saying?
I think we should keep doing the due diligence on that particular property. I think that's the one that's most likely, if Eric and Renata, that you can say or not say, but that's the one in my mind. I think that it still has some questions that have to be answered before I say 100%, but that's the most likely candidate at this point.
So excluding the money part.
Right. Yeah, erase the fact that it cost $1 million.
Right.
So that's what Keith was saying, that don't consider, but we'd have to find out a little bit more about the property owner and
so the one thing that Sonia can do while we're working on that is looking into what can be used for matching funding. So for example, if this property truly ends up being like $1 million property and town's matching funding is like $450,000, that is an amount that's perhaps not likely to be matched by the town. But if that funding, if that matching funding can come from sources that bring down the matching funds from the town to $100,000, then that perhaps could be something that's doable. So, we kind of need to look into that. It's an opportunity. So, if we should perhaps just continue looking into
Okay.
it.
Due
without-
diligence.
Right.
Do we need to make a formal recommendation to the town council? As the open space committee, is that a step we would have to take?
Or can we ask you, Keith, to, again, because I don't think this shouldn't be presented in a public session. It's got to be executive session because it can't be presented publicly.
What's the timeframe for, meeting with, bringing it to them in an executive session?
Well, the next meeting is August 16th.
And you'll be doing some due diligence in the meantime, and you'll have a better idea of if there is any, maybe you'll have, but you can't even speak to the property owners until the town council meeting happens. So, but you can look for other grants in the meantime. So, the recommendation is for us to make a recommendation to the town council to reach out to the property owner and see what the likelihood is. Correct?
Yes, that's what I would recommend you do. And, if you want to identify, again, the top 5 beyond the Ben Road that you would like to pursue, then we would reach out to those 5 and get some answers for you.
Well, we're not going to have a top 5 in the next 2 weeks before the next town council meeting. So do we want to make a recommendation on this property?
Can we like look at just throw in like a parcel or 2 that are on Cedar Mountain? Just include them.
You
in that.
want them. I mean, you're gonna have
Yes,
to take
okay.
that step anyway. You might as well, if it's gonna be a high priority, I would think.
Okay.
I think you get it. My opinion is that so that you're not fighting this question each time, is that you put it on the list, raise it to their attention that these are your priority. These are your top, I think it sounds for me like you've done your work before. What's changed is the properties that have rolled off, but I think you still have an idea of the properties you want to maintain, and at least raise it to their attention. If you bring it to their attention, then I think you're set in an executive session. At least they'll be in the know that this is something you're going to pursue. So you're not starting from 0 each time.
All right, so I think I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but Cedar Mountain would always be number 1 for me, which is number 3, the Ball Company on the vacant residential properties evaluation. Is that correct?
Yeah, 70 North Mountain Road is the.
Would you be in
address.
agreement in putting that as number 1?
Sure.
Okay.
Is that the
How
Cedar
do you
Crest
feel about
or is
that?
that the?
No.
That's
The
the ball.
overlook?
That's the ball,
I don't feel like I
73
can really work, we
acres.
can't work with this list because it's no longer valid if we had the updated
They're up
list.
here. We
So
can look at this, right?
right. It's still listed as number 1. Oh, no, it's
No,
number,
Yeah, it's number this, again, that number is just a
That's
map
right.
reference.
okay.
So.
So it's Golf Company, so it's number 3?
Yeah, that's the map again, it's just a map reference to
So it's
correlate
actually
it.
73?
It's the 73 acre
73
parcel.
acres, right? Okay.
70 North Mountain Road, or 70 Mountain Road is the address.
So do we have, how many boxes does this check for the deed?
How many exact? I mean, it checks quite a few. I mean, there's wetlands up there. There's a trap rock ridge line that we already have zoning regulations in place for that. There's a vernal pool up there.
It's near two
Somewhat
other
adjacent to-
towns. This one is gonna be highly competitive. There is public interest. It's in our POCD. It has many, many things
Okay.
that this one will rate highly.
Okay.
The one issue with it is whether or not we have a property owner that's willing to negotiate.
It's funny, it's, even if it was 2010, the assessed value, the appraised value is lower than
What is it?
31 was.
Oh, but not anymore.
Because it's kind of landlocked, well, it's not, it has access.
But
Has
why,
access
why
off of
that
the
one
state
for
road.
Cedar Mountain versus another one of the Cedar Mountain pieces? Like, why are you picking that one out as your favorite?
Is that the overlook, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
it
the overlook?
has the
And it's
overlook.
also
It
attached.
has a lot of,
Trails
walkable
already.
trails.
It already has existing
established
trails.
Trails.
It's attached to the town-owned property. It has 3 vernal pools and it's privately owned,
There's
which
a-
makes it susceptible to development.
Is the other Balf one, the one that's on top, the one that's
So
adjacent to it?
Cedar Crest owns this piece in between.
Yep.
And then Balf owns this chunk up here. They also own this other small piece here. Which is just separate from this one, you know, you may want to add that to your list, but this is obviously, this isn't up on the ridge line.
Mm.
But obviously it's gonna be a desirable piece going, and that's probably something you acquire at a later date, but.
It should be on the list.
Yes. Do we want to put that as number 1 with that as number 2 right behind it, or it? And
That
how
one-
do, and
But
how,
would you look at number 2 in the same way if we didn't get number 1? Like, would that still be your number 2 or would it be something else? You know what I mean? Like, is it
Right,
your
again,
number 2 or is it only because it could go in tandem with the other? one?
right? It,
But it's still a piece of Cedar Mountain.
right, I think for me, anything on Cedar Mountain is top priority. Would I be able to call on, it's not public comment,
Comment right now. but-
It's not yet.
okay. He can ask a question now, or does that have to go under? public
You're
comment?
under new business, so I don't think you really have
Robert's
ability
rules,
to
sorry,
do
Dave.
that.
Sorry, Dave.
So would that be number 2? We got number 1, we got number 2.
I mean, maybe you don't even have to rank them right now, maybe you should get 5 on a list.
Well, that's what I'd like to do, just get 5 on a list, because I
Because
think
you-
it's gonna take us a while to really go through them, and I don't, another hour for me is something I can't do tonight.
No, I think we can,
But I think we can do a quick 5.
My opinion on that is just, if you give a rank list and you go before council, then the council gets into the question, well, why is this one number 1? Why isn't this one?
Right.
I think this is more important. If you just give them 5, it's like, hey, we're looking at these.
yeah, these are meaningful opportunities. And but we don't know if they're opportunities, so.
Well, there's 7 that are listed for Cedar Mountain. Is that still true? In the new list?
I believe the main list are the 2, the number 2 there and the number 3 are the ones that are owned by Balf.
But for the ones that are labeled Cedar Mountain, how many of those are there?
There are 1, 2, well, they include Cedar Hill Cemetery in the Cedar Mountain list, which,
I wouldn't add that because I don't.
right, and
Yeah.
they include some of the properties on Cedarwood Lane with their rear properties as part of Cedar Mountain on the old list, you know.
What is the other side of Cedar Street?
What
Right?
is the Mark P property?
Which number is that?
33.
33.
So that's the
Mark
property
Ave?
we were talking about.
Oh, that
That's
was
the.
33, we've acquired that.
Yeah, that used to be
Oh.
Marquette.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that's another one that's off the table, and that's in green. So the green we've acquired, if you see it on this list in yellow, that means that there's an approved development. Or it's been developed. So,
Do we want to put, and I think we should put this property that the grant, what's that? The
Fan Road.
Mangillo, is
Fan Road,
everybody
Fan Road.
good with that
Yes.
being in the top 5? Do we want to put that at number
I-
3?
Yeah,
Or-
not
or
just
we said we're not
numbers.
gonna
Yeah,
rank-
we're not ranking them.
Oh, that's right, the top 5. So
If
that's
we have a top 5 that's
Mangillo
gonna
we're
push
calling
something
it?
else out from Cedar Mountain, though. Do we want to do that?
Well,
Well, I think we want the actual mountain and the other parts of it, it might say Golf Company, but they're not actually, they wouldn't actually be on the mountain. So Cedar Hill Cemetery is farther, much farther, and that would be part of it. Does anybody want to put that in the top 5?
I think that would be difficult because I bet there's a foundation that has Cedar Hills. I think that's would really be.
Well, it's
messy.
also separated by the huge hole in the ground.
Yeah, I don't think.
That is the quarry.
I
So
mean, we're
I
the only
wouldn't put it in my
ones-
top 5.
We're the only ones that are saying top 5, top 10, top 7. Like, I think we should pick like how many are important, the most important, and then we can, present to the council, whether it's top 10, top 12, they won't care. It's just the top X amount, and you know what I mean? Like, say like Cedar Mountain has 7, and then we add that other property and that's 8, so we could give them a top 8. Like, it's only, like, it's our
So you
decision.
want all of Cedar Mountain?
Yeah, can we just, present as, there's
Just Cedar
properties
Mountain?
on Cedar
Okay.
Mountain that are, fragmented, but if any of them become available, we'd be,
And that's 1.
yeah, there's one.
I'm in agreement. All right.
well, they're not one now, but if we could get them all one day,
Okay.
they would be one.
So all of them on Cedar Mountain is 1. We don't have to fragment them on our list.
Not for the
Okay.
purposes of
Right.
putting it. forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's perfect. All right. So that moves the Mangillo property up to number 2. Well, I won't say that anymore.
Puts it into the
Just to keep
list.
It puts it on the list.
I would put that on the list.
Hartford Hospital, that property, is that right across the street from the town center?
So, no, this one was really odd, the way that on the original list, I will show you how, so it's the Patricia Genova area. Now Hartford Hospital owns everything in blue here. Now, what only was on the list was this piece here on Cedar, which is across near where the dog park is, et cetera, and a piece over here. But to leave the buildings and stuff in between, which for obvious reasons, I don't, that's just the way it was done at the time. Certainly this piece along Constance Lee,
We got the
Might
dog
be
park there.
the dog
now,
park's
too.
there. I don't know how amenable Hartford Hospital is to potentially selling it.
I don't know how valuable that is to even, I mean, that's right downtown.
Right.
Honestly, like that piece right there is a good piece for like actual development.
Okay.
Like that's downtown. If we want something to happen, like I would kind of want it to happen there. It's low and wet, and I don't know that it's like lending itself well for development, period. So I don't think that something will happen, but location wise, it's a good location. for
That's number 4. Is it number 4 on the?
Yes. It's number 4.
So now I
That's
know
what
we're
I'm
not supposed to be
looking at.
thinking about the money, but that is also highly
Priced.
Well, that's
priced.
it's because of all the infrastructure they have. They have
Yeah.
buildings there.
Yeah, they have buildings there.
So that's why they carved out those 2 pieces, because they're just open land.
Oh, I see. As if they would just sell them off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that was.
I mean, I think that's less desirable in my mind, unless we see that as an opportunity to prevent development downtown. Because, do we need more apartment buildings? I'm not saying we do or don't. It's just a question.
There's a lot of downtowns do have green spaces
Mm,
incorporated
that's
into it, and
true.
ours doesn't. Ours has a
Yeah.
gazebo in the middle of the parking lot.
And just so we're clear, the Hartford Hospital
You're right.
property is zoned as public land because it's a hospital. So there's probably less of a chance. Not, there won't be, because I know there was an application a number of years ago for a Walgreens at the corner there. I think it got denied, but
Well, if we already are renting or whatever, or somebody thought that that was a good place for a dog park, wouldn't that piece of property eventually be good for us to keep as a dog park? I mean, I don't know.
I think, let me just say that the dog park is a lease arrangement with Hartford Health for
Right.
3 years, and we pay a very small amount of money annually for that. But after 3 years, the hospital may want to take it back.
But they may want to just say, keep it too. So should that be on our list?
They're keeping their plans close to the vest at this point on the whole, all of the property of Hartford Healthcare. We're in discussions with them, but they're not revealing their long-range plans to any great degree.
But if we had our druthers and our wishes and whatever, and we already put a dog park there, if we weren't worried about Hartford Hospital's long-range plans, wouldn't we want to keep the dog park there? So wouldn't that want to be a property we'd want to keep?
Well, yeah, from my perspective, you'd want to get as much of the Hartford Hospital property as possible. But I'm just telling you that I don't think that they're very, they're not very talkative on what their plans are overall. I think they're not going to reveal that. But we should indicate that we'd go after it if it was certainly available.
So then the idea would be to just, again, all things being equal and possible, you go to them and you say, how many acres is it? Yeah, it's 12?
It's
So
12, yeah.
So let's say, what would one of those highlighted areas be, do you think?
yeah, I think this is the larger piece along Constance Lee where the dog park is. And that's going to be, I think that's the 12.5 acre piece or something roughly.
So you're buying like undeveloped part of their holdings.
Right.
So it wouldn't be worth 26 million, it would be worth a lot less.
Right.
So I don't think it's a terrible idea, actually.
Put on the list.
Put it on the list.
What the heck?
Let's put it on the list, and if we think something is better, we can knock it off the list, but we're thinking of open space. I know you're thinking of a developable land, so we're gonna probably differ on that, but I like it for open space too, because we don't have any green space. You're right in downtown. But if we're looking at the rest of them for large parcels, let's just go
Yeah.
quickly with, okay, Marco Realty has 25 acres, but it's 100% wetlands, highly unlikely it'll be developed. So I wouldn't put that on the list. Alumni Road, where is that? That's 21 acres, number 24.
Oh, that's fine. Alumni Road.
Right, Newington 2007 LLC.
So I believe that parcel is one of these in this general area. I think it's owned by Shelburne now.
And where is that exactly?
This is, I mean,
It's behind,
here's the gate, it's right
skating
across,
rink?
right across from the skating rink.
Okay. I don't know if I can put that on here.
What's the address?
Yep, hold on.
Oh, I just see Alumni Road here.
Yeah, no, I'm just
No,
thinking.
I'm finding it. I got it. Yeah. What number was it on your old list? Sorry.
24?
25. There
Mhm.
301?
we go. Yeah, 301. Yes. Well, not well. Yes, 21 acres, 301. Along my road.
They also own the same thing, number 26. Is that right next to them?
It also says, yeah.
Acres, which is the other piece there. So they own this piece and then this piece adjacent to it. This piece is partially developed now with a parking lot, a fenced parking lot. you'll probably see it if you go by there. It's attached to, you go down Alumni Road.
Oh, that mattress place, it's behind the mattress place.
Yeah, it's in that
Okay.
general area towards the back, correct. So part of that is developed now. It's not the entire piece, it's a few acres.
I know that piece, not that little piece, but the other one. I know there's people do dirt bikes and stuff through there.
They could absolutely very well.
There's trails through there.
When there's wetlands on the north, you can see the brook going through there. So there is some wetlands on the north end of this piece.
Do we want that on our list? Do we want to identify that? I don't know how I don't have a strong feeling for that one. It's a good size amount, but is there another parcel that we would want that's more desirable for us? Like, should we skip over to the vacant residential larger properties, Haltner? Where's
It's
that?
gone.
Oh, that's gone.
That's Culver.
Oh, that's
Oh,
Culver.
yeah.
Okay.
What about that property that's you cross Hartford Avenue and Main Street and you keep going towards West Hartford and there's just nice brook and there's like that open field
Right here.
right by Brookside or Woodbridge or
Mhm.
Well, this piece is owned by Balf across from the main entrance to their stuff. They own this piece over here.
no, it's you're on Main Street.
Okay, Main Street.
Where are you?
Right-
Okay.
right here,
And you
yeah.
cross Hartford Avenue
Yep. You're going north. We just cross Hartford Ave
and you see that where the brook is?
over here.
Yeah, and there's all nice open space and the brook is pretty and everything. Who owns all that?
The condo owns quite a bit of this in here. And then the state owns quite a bit of this in here that they allow us to maintain.
Oh, they permit you to, oh,
Yes.
okay, so, okay.
The
What
things
about,
that I'm looking at are, when it says POCD strategy is yes, and abuts existing open space, because I know that developing a corridor of open space is important. So I'm kind of looking at what ones have double yeses in there as far as like weighing out which properties, I'm prioritizing in my head.
Renata, remember when we were doing the historical loop thing?
Yes.
You had a vision of developing by the brook or something?
Hyperbrook Trail, yes. So that would be where the multi-purpose trail ends on Newington Junction,
Right in here.
extending it perhaps along the Piper Brook to where Trout Brook Trail is in West Hartford,
Connecting it to that trail.
but we didn't get that grant,
Oh,
at least not last year. So.
But is that land on here? Should that go onto our list here?
That is not necessarily all of the open space kind of land. That is some of that land is built on, some of it is along streets. You know, some of it might be along the existing road networks.
All right, so we've got all the pieces of Cedar Mountain, we've got Mongillo, Hartford Hospital. And if we could absolutely put Newington 2007 on there. It's a large amount of land. I don't want to discourage that.
It's next to a wetland area. I don't know. I'd have to drive by there to see if like it's a place like high school kids, like
Yeah.
if they're, just kind of something that like be, after school, you can like,
we could put a trail there for cross country, because they always run up and down Alumni Road and whatever,
That's
so that
true.
would be.
That's right. So we can add that on there. So those two pieces, which is 24 and 26, numbers 24 and 26, named 2007. Because that's a good chunk. That's 32.
You may want to ask Keith. He may have some information on those pieces. I know we talked about it once a year or so ago for something else. I don't know if he's
Which pieces now are we talking about?
on Alumni Road, Keith. We had that discussion right on the curve there of
Yeah, we were actually looking at that as a possible site for
Right.
a merger of the Parks Department, the Highway Department, the EOC and so forth. We've been in conversation with the property owner. At this point, there's no definite plans that we would be moving forward for a proposal. So
Put it on there. All right, that's on our list.
So we have 1,
Yep,
2, 3.
that's 4.
I mean, I don't know if you want to do it by looking at the map or by looking down the list. I mean, it's, I know.
Yeah, let's go down the list now. Let's see what's left.
Yeah,
mean,
I
And
kind of
I'd rather
have
look
been
at the
looking at the
updated list,
list.
you know, yeah.
Number 20 on the vacant residential, Eddie, where's that?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
gone.
It's gone.
I was just for that was Church Street subdivision.
Oh,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, okay. All right. Where is the McBride Properties?
What number is that?
Number 16?
Number 16, I believe that's been approved for development.
Welcome to Newington. Well, it says 100% wetlands. Am I looking, does it?
Yeah, that was,
the-
I think that was bad days.
It says 30%
If
wetland.
you look at the updated list, there's no wetlands on that site.
Okay, I'm looking, this is,
Chats. Where is Chats?
Just give me the number so I can find it.
24
24. Okay.
On which, on the resident?
on vacant residential.
Okay, so
Dog
there,
park? I mean, the dog trainer?
it's in that general area that they identified a lot of these as rear properties. So basically these takes are, if you look up there and you see a 1 in parentheses, they have buildings on them. So I don't know,
Oh,
these are very deep lots
okay.
on Maple Hill.
Yeah.
Just so you guys have an idea. They're like these, so I don't know if
Yeah.
the intention was to buy the whole lot or just buy these rear pieces and they're kind of disconnected. I don't
Okay.
know how.
Well, can
You
we
know.
just move forward with with these 4 for now, and we can add to them if we're having a difficult time? I mean, we can add to this, can't we?
Well, the Alumni Road one really is 2 properties.
it is,
Yeah.
So we have 5.
I would include them.
I have them as 1.
Oh,
Yeah, it's 2 separate parcels per se.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
You
let's,
can
call
call them
it-
Alumni Road properties, however you want to do it. It's the same owner.
so we've got Cedar Mountain, Mongillo, Hartford Hospital, and 24 and 26,
So on
and-
this list, there is at least like 6 or 7 property owners minimum that I think Keith would end up asking counsel if he could enter conversations with.
Okay,
I would imagine that's plenty to start.
Yeah.
Let's, you know,
and during the course of the conversation, I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable for him to say, and if something, I mean, I don't want to limit ourselves to this if something else becomes available, and just say, this is the direction we're going, but we're open to, we have a list identified, we can even give, well, whatever.
I mean, is there if I were a landowner and I wanted to donate a parcel or sell it to the town, who would I call? And if that person gets the phone call, could we all kind of get notified so the conversation, you know, it can be assessed from our standpoint
Right.
and we can make our thoughts known.
so procedurally, you do that.
Okay,
When Culver Street subdivision, before it became proposed, there was a parcel across the street, a portion of land that was donated to the town, and this committee was notified. It just didn't have a quorum to meet.
okay.
But the process is that first is notified to the open space committee, the council is notified, there is a formal acceptance process.
Mhm.
for the land, so all these channels do take place. And as far as these properties that were lost on the list, portion of those properties were given to the town. You know, the portion of Calvert Street property, the portion of that farm, I kind of want to say 50%
Almost 50%.
was granted to the town
That's conservation.
as a conservation, as well as in the recent Church Street subdivision, a portion of that land, I don't remember the percentage, but you know,
It's
pretty
five
large.
acres.
pretty large percentage of that land was also given to the town. So perhaps not the
Undevelopable anyway.
whole,
Yeah.
perhaps not the
Okay,
whole
thanks a
entire
lot.
parcel was
Yeah.
preserved,
Yeah.
but some portion of land was at least granted to the
Yeah.
town. So, you know, this process is helpful when we want to preserve the whole parcel.
Hmm.
But, you know, it's helpful to know at least what's on this list so that we know to at least ask for portions of land.
So where the
Okay.
money's being held, is that a land trust of some kind? Like, we developed a land trust or no?
We do not have a land
Okay.
trust at this point,
Put on a con-
not that I'm aware of.
I was looking online, there is the Berlin Land Trust, which does do other parts of central Connecticut. I don't know if affiliating with them would benefit us in any way.
Well, the town doesn't set up a land trust, that a private individual would,
It's a trust.
Yeah.
and that did happen at one point. The Carol Waitowitz had set it up, but we never got any money. It never got off the ground, so to speak,
I'm just thinking
because
in terms of
nothing
people
was
getting like
ever.
their tax deduction and stuff.
Yeah,
So we may want to see what we can do. I can check into that if you want me to.
I think that would be a great idea to look into a land trust. If you want to
I can even have them talk to
or
us.
it could be something for us to look into.
Well, and I
Yeah, or
think-
just at least have further discussions
Yeah.
about, yeah.
Wouldn't it down the road, if we had the ability to put something in a land trust, wouldn't that also make donors more comfortable? Because it wouldn't be like something that the town just decided
They're
to
not.
flip later.
And I think
'Cause they
smaller landowners might be more likely to
Yeah.
give it to the land trust.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, because then it's really protected, not just owned by the town.
Right. So I think we've gone through on the agenda, we've gone through the prioritization, we've gotten that done. We've gone through the inventory matrix that will be a work in progress. Requested reference link, we received that. And documents. Am I correct? Are we on public comments at this point now? Is there anything else we needed to do under new business that I missed?
I just wanted to ask about number 22, CCSU.
The 7 acres, 100% wetlands,
Yeah.
Piper Brook.
Talk about that one a little bit.
So this parcel that they're talking about is actually. Yeah, is in this area right in here. Over by 8th Street.
We're-
Oh, sorry. Oh, there, that's it. You're like, what is he showing us?
We did a sidewalk on that. We did. You know what?
So
I
it's
don't
a-
know that
it's
I went
a-
on that sidewalk.
There we go.
I might not have gone on
It's
that one.
not, it's nice. I mean, there's a nice
It's a good
trail.
piece, yeah, this is a good piece and connected piece, so.
And
It
that's
is.
considered 100% wetlands, that one?
In this general area, let me see what I have on that.
Well, it
That's
something.
what it says
No,
here, is it
it's
still-
actually in the 100-year floodplain, Piper Brook. I only have it as, a couple acres of wetlands.
So what does that mean, 100, the floodplain?
Floodplain is worse than wetlands.
Okay, so nobody would really ever build on that, right?
More than likely not,
More
because
than likely not. Wetlands are generally regulated municipally. Floodplain is often regulated by feds.
Okay.
So, you have local regulations that apply to the floodplain areas, but you also have floodplain insurance. You have to adhere to certain federal requirements for flood resistant building. And it's much more complex. So building in a floodplain is way more complicated than building in wetlands.
So we don't need to add it to the list. It's pretty much protected.
I wouldn't think so. CCSU is part of the state, so that's going to be a whole nother layer of dealing with.
Mhm.
And people can somebody access it now?
A lot of this area is Gail's probably aware too. There's a lot of ATV riding through
Yeah,
there
there's a
quite a
lot of
bit.
trails. and stuff.
There's all kinds of trails over there.
So people are already using it.
They're already
Recreational. So can we just so I just want to make sure I understand, where it's 100% wetlands, I mean, and you're gonna send us
I'm going to send you the
Updated list.
updated list. So I mean that's
that really means no one's gonna buy it to develop.
We can't guarantee any of that stuff. Honestly, like engineering can engineer anything. People can engineer development on Mars and in lands that are, completely undevelopable. So we can't guarantee any of such thing. It's expensive to engineer development in wetlands. It's even more so expensive to engineer development in floodplain. Depending on what happens with economy, depending on what happens with pressures with housing markets and all these other things, it all, in the end, it all comes down to money. If it pays enough to build something somewhere, there will be some incentive for somebody to build something somewhere. So,
But I guess my question would be, Gail's asking a good question, but would the town of Newington give somebody a permit to build there in wetlands?
So the wetlands agency is regulated by the wetlands rules. So let's just step back for a moment. There are specific rules by which each land use agency is supposed to act. Those rules they must adhere to, otherwise they can get sued when they make decisions that are not based specifically restricted to those guiding rules, right? There are enabling statutes for both zoning and wetlands that guide how the wetlands agency must act and how the zoning agency must act. So when the Wetlands Commission acts, they must base their decision explicitly on what is within the Wetlands Acts and the wetlands regulations. So as long as they are covered on that, they're good. If they step outside of that, then there can be a problem. So that kind of answers and doesn't answer.
There's interpretation by every individual commissioner as well. I think, there's always that too. So, yeah, nothing is guaranteed or,
Yeah.
I mean,
it's tricky. It gets tricky.
It is
Because a
tricky.
lot of it is
That is the
subjective.
problem. We can say it is less likely that there will be a development on a property that's 100% wetlands. In my experience, I have seen people step away from projects that require building bridges and building things in wetlands and engineering things that are so expensive that, it just doesn't work that way. People step away from projects when they expect a lot of opposition from public, a lot of opposition from commission. But every now and again, you will have somebody who is just brazen enough or think there is enough money that they will proceed with stuff. So, it's always that. It's best if we can buy And if we can own, that's the best protection we can have. But then again, less likely that there will be a development in floodplain, for sure.
I mean, nobody thought they were gonna come with an application on top of Cedar Mountain with all the blasting that was gonna take place, but there they were.
Right.
So
Right.
if somebody perceives a market,
They're gonna give it a try. Yeah.
That's why I was looking at the Angelini Court locations. There's 2 of them.
Yep.
They're cheap, and if, especially if we had a matching grant for them, we could get, what, 25 plus, what's the other one?
the ones I showed you earlier,
What
down here,
numbers
they're
are they?
landlocked.
19 and, yeah, 19.
These. Have this larger piece, and then you have this strip behind here. And I believe the town has a conservation over a portion of the smaller strip currently.
Yeah, it says it's an easement that abuts it.
Yeah, I believe the smaller piece here in green was where the conservation easement is. And then this piece is the larger piece.
Very hard to access.
It's just that the public
For
wouldn't
the
be able to.
public. Yeah.
But for open space, that's the other part of open space, is just leaving it to be preserved and to be, areas for birds and
Mm-hmm.
preventing flooding and all that.
Did you want to add that to the list?
I kind of want to talk to Renata a little bit more about that before. So do you think, just with all that you know, and knowing that there's a small risk, would you think it would be worth putting on the list?
On the first list that you go to the council for negotiation, I probably wouldn't select that one. Not in this first round. I would say, because we're trying to get some conversation going, perhaps the parcels that you have identified so far are the ones that you start with. As you keep on meeting, you may want to develop your properties, prioritize them. The next step would be to perhaps talk to the planning commission and see if there is an interest in amending plan of conservation and development and introducing some of the priority parcels that are identified into the plan of conservation and development. That adds a layer of protection when a development proposal, when it comes in, and when we write recommendations for approvals, especially if they involve things such as zone changes, not necessarily with special permits, but if there is like a zone change, for example, that's proposed. One of the things that Planning Commission needs to consider is whether or not there is something in the plan of conservation and development that talks about that. And then I can say, well, in the plan of conservation and development, this parcel is identified as a priority 3 for preservation. That was part of my issue with some of the development proposals that came through, that I didn't have that in the plan of conservation and development. I didn't have that tool to use. So that would be one thing that we could do. But also, once you develop your list, your other thing would be to then approach council and say, so now that we heard from 5 out of 6 people, how about talking to 3 more property owners about these other properties that we're also interested in. So that's how I would.
And we've got a lot of other properties to discuss that I'd like to do at another meeting. I'd like to move the agenda along, and we have this list and we'll work on that for now. And let's keep the rest of the properties for further discussion at a future meeting. And before we go to public comments, should we set a meeting, the next meeting, or are we going to stay on our regular schedule?
So
Which
your
would be
regular schedule right now is that your next meeting is in October. You can choose how you want to meet, how often you want to meet. But if you want to meet before October, you need to schedule a special meeting.
So will we need to meet to discuss, to hear what the conversation was that our town manager has with the town council before October, or I'm not sure, should we go ahead and wait until October?
Who is approaching the town council specifically? Who would do that?
We
town
just asked the
manager.
town manager.
Great. So we would give him the list and he would talk to,
You have given us a list.
Yes.
We'll compile a list. I'll run it by, probably by email through all of you, just verify that we have collected the information correctly. And I'm trying to think, we will probably actually just send this to chair because we can't email everybody on the commission. It constitutes an illegal meeting. We can't do that. So we will send an email to chair. If you confirm that we have the accurate properties, we'll send it to the town manager.
great.
And him doing that would then require talking to the town council. If they approve this, the conversations will happen. I don't know that that'll take time. So I don't know that we would need to have a meeting before October.
But
Unless,
are we going to have any, are we gonna take any stab at all at the possibility of the grant? Because if we are, we can meet in August. That would be my only,
I don't think we are, unless am I wrong in assuming that that's not happening?
well, we
Or-
identified properties that
Well,
the
that's-
grant would,
Yeah.
that would be
It is on our
quote, good
list.
for the grant.
So if
I guess,
it gets approved and he does speak to them and their interest, show interest, all in time for the grant, then we would need a special meeting. And we could call one then. Is that how that would work? He approaches town council, they say, go ahead, have your conversations.
I mean, and I can't speak for anybody, but once he has that conversation with council, maybe he could just give a memo to you guys. Hey, they said I could start talking to people. He may not have anything to report even in October by that. We don't know how the process goes, the wheels of justice, so to speak, but Keith can probably speak better
well,
than
if
that.
something pops up of interest, maybe then we just find a time to meet.
Then we'll
And call a
schedule a
special meeting.
Right, we can call, if you feel there's something we need to discuss or whatever, let us know and we'll schedule.
Otherwise, we will keep the regularly scheduled meeting in October.
Yeah, I would agree that if something comes up where we feel that the committee should come together, we'll let you know and you can schedule a special meeting. But at this point, I think, let's see what the reaction is from the council. And then we'll report back to you on that. And, Gail serves on your committee, so I'm certain that she could express it to you all individually. So, I think we're taking one step at a time probably, and not schedule a meeting except the one in October at this stage of the game. And you can always have a special meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think it works this way, but just for the sake of asking, because it seems like it's an awfully broad sweep for Sonia, but if there were any grants that came across your way that were 100% grants, would you be able to reach out to Bernadette and then from there we would call a special meeting? She would reach out.
I'm work at the town, so I approach Keith first and then Keith would tell me if I can move forward.
Okay.
Great.
And is
He'll
that
be-
something, like, I don't know if that's how this works with how we can work with you, but like.
With the
is
grants,
that
anything I identify, I bring to Keith's attention first, and then to the subject matter experts are sometimes simultaneously depending on the subject. But yeah, I'm going to be searching for anything that can serve as matching funds, and I have my marching orders in terms of trying to find other opportunities to preserve open space for the town.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda, right? Public comments. Dave, would you like to ask your question?
Yes.
Is it moved by now? or-
It's really really simple question. It seems like everybody wants to.
It's a public meeting, we're not picking you up. So you can.
It seems like everyone wants to preserve Cedar Mountain, and it's a bunch of just, properties owned by different people. Has anyone thought about approaching the state to buy it as a state forest?
By
I mean-
as a state forest?
State acquire it as a state forest. It's contiguous to state land. It's going to require bonded money to buy it. They already have that ability. Has anyone talked about that? We go to our
Well, and I
state
guess I would
representative and the
defer
Department of.
to Sonia on that. Would that be a possibility?
I'm gonna go back to Keith on that. Is that something the town, because they have to go through a bond?
Well, let me just ask, first of all, what property are we talking about again?
The Cedar Mountain, the Cedar Mountain property.
Well, it's owned by several, but are we talking about the Cedar Crest property?
No, he's talking about the ball piece at 73 acres where the toll application was a few years ago.
That's the ball piece.
Correct.
Yeah, so, and the question is, declare it a state forest?
He wants to know if anyone has approached the state about them purchasing the property as a state forest, since they have the bonding and whatnot.
No, not that I'm aware of.
How would we go about doing, would that even be something that we can do? And ask them to, yeah. I guess that would be one big grant and asking them to just purchase it and declare it a state forest? Is that what you mean, Dave?
We go to DEP, the Commissioner of DEP, and we say, we think you should acquire this and make it into a state forest. And he tells us what to do. Rather than us, like trying to buy little pieces and, wedge, just go to them and say, look, we want to preserve this land. It's the only open space left in Newington. And somebody needs to get a hold of it all before it gets all partitioned out.
And is that something you would be amenable to doing? And that again would have to go through the town council that would have.
Why?
Doesn't sound like it.
It's a state thing.
It would be a
So-
transaction between the state and the private
Go
individual.
to your state, maybe go to your state reps and whatever. talk to
So
them.
it would,
I don't know.
could even be something that we as the open space committee make the recommendation or request. Okay, I guess we can, yeah,
Seems a lot easier.
go
But I would
straight
go to
to.
DEP
okay.
commissioner first and say, what do we need to do? And then he could give us some procedures. I don't know, but I have no idea how that's done at all. I don't know
Yeah.
how a state forest gets created.
There may be an avenue for DEP or, especially with the Trap Rock Ridge line up there
Maybe
and
they
stuff.
have, they have just money lying around for it.
Yeah.
No, that's a good,
The state always has money lying around. All right, well, thank you for that suggestion. It never even dawned on me to do that.
Well,
So-
rather than asking the state to give us money, why don't you buy it?
All right, we'll have further discussion about that as well. With the next one, I'll look into it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea.
Never thought of it. And now, did you have anything else?
No.
Okay, commissioner comments.
I just,
Anybody else?
yeah, I just want to say that, actually, in a way, this is sort of disappointing that this is all we have to work with. But, I mean, we'll work with it, but
It's disappointing
So-
that how much is gone
yes,
already
exactly.
from the last time, but at
So-
least we're here working on it.
So we will send you an updated list.
Mhm.
And we will send you, I'm trying to think, we tried printing these maps on a larger printout, but we were not able to do that. I think it would be helpful to have those maps on a little bit larger, like PDF. but the way they were originally formatted, it just doesn't work.
I can see maybe once you pare the list down a little more, I can get a new GIS map created that will be maybe even a little interactive
More
or something.
like eye-friendly,
Yeah.
right?
Because like when they did the zoning district stuff, they had a big like poster board.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you know, it was a 2010 technology that I'm trying to.
I was
migrate
even
today.
trying to do like 11 by 17
Anyway.
on the map and we couldn't.
Hmm.
So, but at any rate, start reviewing the inventory and then next time when we meet, we will hopefully be able to go then again and reprioritize and readdress what was the conversation between the town manager, town council, and take it from there.
Well, thank you both for your work on this. This is great. Yeah, thank you.
And Sonia will give us her guidelines for the grant. So as you are working on your prioritization, prioritize by the grant criteria.
Yeah,
Use
she's-
the grant criteria as you're thinking on
Because I
prioritization.
remember Bernadette and I would get pushback, particularly from TPZ, about you're going after every little piece of land in town. And there was this, the open space committee were tree huggers, and anytime there was a little, and that's not what we wanted. And this will help legitimize what we're going after. If we go according to the criteria.
Right, yeah. Okay, we've got a good plan in place, and thank you for your time and work tonight. Thanks to the public for being here. Thanks for your work. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Keith.
We have a motion and a second.
Oh, yes.
And all in favor? Okay, thank you.
God, so